I'm Connor Ruebusch, and if you are interested in the finer points of face punching, you've come to the right place. This is Heavy Hands. Hello and welcome to Heavy Hands. I am Connor Ruebusch, your host. With me is Patrick Wyman, my intrepid co-host. Two bon viveurs with a penchant for the coup de grace. How's that for a pseudo-French introduction to the show?
a penchant for the coup de
penchant, yes, of course. Welcome to Heavy Hands, finer points of face punching, yada, yada, yada. You know how it goes. We have a whole bevy of amazing fights to discuss today, and so I figure we may as well not delay. We are covering a trio of fights, all of which have me absolutely titillated. I'm talking, of course, about the main features, basically, of the main card of UFC 211, which will be taking place May 13th in Dallas, Texas. Our main event, heavyweight championship fight between Stipe Miocic, the defending champion, against Junior Dos Santos, who beat him 2 years ago. In the co-main event, women's strawweight title fight, Jedrzejczyk, one of the most dominant champions in the UFC, is taking on Jedrzejczyk-Andrade, who stands a very good chance of beating her. And then for the main card opener, we had that flyweight number one contenders bout between Cejudo and Sergio Pettis. All of those are fascinating, and each of them will surely take up an entire segment to discuss. These are my favorite kinds of episodes, Pat. Honestly, I really like our inter-event, just interesting discussion episodes where we can pick a topic and run with it. But when we have a card that is so good that you just spend a really long time talking about like 2 or 3 fights, that's when that's a sign, that's a symptom of me being extremely excited for a fight card.
Yeah, these are, I like talking about the cream. I think we all know this at this point. Like these, the biggest cards with the biggest fights that you can dig into in the most depth. Yeah. I think that is my favorite thing about this sport. And when we have these kinds of events, it's just my everything. Like this is why I enjoy covering this sport, is events like this and fights like this.
Yeah, and these are fights that not only mean the most because of like the importance of the people taking place in them, like the divisional relevance, but as far as matchups go, they're fascinating contests. Like the way that the opponents combine with each other, you know?
This is probably the best heavyweight title fight matchup since Velasquez Dos Santos 3, right?
I guess. I think it's a better one. Like, I think it stands to be a lot less one-sided than that was. You know?
Yeah, okay, Velasquez Dos Santos 2 then, before we knew what Kane was going to do for 25 minutes.
Sure, yeah. The most enticing. Yeah, it sounds about right.
Yeah, this is, I mean, because both of these guys are unlike, all respect to my former coach, Fabricio Verdum. Like, Verdum was like a 38-year-old dude when he was fighting Cain Velasquez, or 37 years old when he was fighting Cain Velasquez. Like, it was hard to look at him and say, oh, yeah, that dude is right there in the prime of his career. He's still got a ton left in the tank. He's going to be a better fighter moving forward, regardless of what's happened since then. Like, that was hard to look at it in that sense. That was supposed to be another Velasquez title defense on his way to, like a 7th fight with Junior Dos Santos?
Yeah, something like that. Or maybe a 5th fight with Bigfoot Silva. Who knows? The options were open. Yeah,
something along those lines. And same deal with Miocic Verdum. Like, I don't think Stipe got a ton of love going into that. Overeem, Miocic, it was a close matchup, but like it wasn't the most compelling because it was hard to argue that we were seeing the very best version of Overeem ever. Like, I think we're going to see the best version of both Miocic and Dos Santos in this fight.
Yeah, I hope so. And I think there's strong evidence to suggest that we will see the best versions of both guys. So let's set aside any further ado. Let's jump into it. We've got Stipe Miocic defending his title for the second time in this fight. Since the first time that he and Junior Dos Santos met, these guys have trod 2 very different paths. Junior Dos Santos has traded 1 loss for 1 win. He was surprised knocked out by Alistair Overeem, although Not a surprise to me, if I do say so myself. And then had a really, really impressive performance over Ben Rothwell, but that's not exactly the kind of career you would like to look for somebody heading into a title shot. Of course, the fight before that Overeem loss was a win over Stipe Miocic. Since his loss to Dos Santos, Miocic has gone 4 in a row, all 4 of them by knockout. He dominated Mark Hunt, more or less, for 4.5 rounds before finally TKOing him in the 5th. He obliterated Andrei Arlovski in the first round of their fight. He obliterated Fabricio Verdum after a fairly competitive 2 minutes by casting a spell, which caused Verdum to uncontrollably run forward with his chin up. And then he had a 1-round thriller with Alistair Overeem, the last guy to defeat Junior Dos Santos, and knocked him out in the first round for his first title defense. So do you think, looking at the way these two guys' careers have progressed, that Miocic has gotten significantly better than Dos Santos since their first fight? Or do you think he has improved more than Dos Santos has managed to improve in the same amount of time?
Well, so, okay, I don't know that that's exactly how I would frame it. I would say Miocic is a better fighter than he was then in a couple of very specific ways. He is a better boxer than he was when they fought the first time in 2014. He's a much better counterpuncher than he was when they first fought in 2014, and he's better moving forward. So, but I don't think that he's necessarily a better wrestler. I don't think he's a better top control artist. Not that we've seen a whole lot of that from him. I think in those specific ways he's better. For Dos Santos to me has finally made the transition from being a puncher to being a boxer. Mm-hmm. That for a long time he was just really fast and really powerful and a very linear, straight line kind of fighter who relied on the threat of his speed and power to force you to respect him. We saw this a lot from fighters who kind of came up in like the late 2000s, who were starting between 2008 and 2010, somewhere in there, who were hitting their peak at that point, where they really relied on the threat of their physicality to keep you at bay and didn't have the second line of defense, like the footwork, to enforce that if you didn't respect them. Like Anthony Pettis is the other quintessential example of this. But so to me, finally, Dos Santos has made the adjustment and realized that guys don't have to respect him. And if they're not going to have to respect him, then he's going to have to do something to keep his back off the fence and keep it in open space where he's most comfortable. And I think that we've seen in his last 2 fights, finally, the signs of him doing that.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Absolutely. I want to talk about, you mentioned that you think Stipe Miocic's boxing has gotten better. And I think
he's a much better boxer.
I want to clarify what you mean by that.
So I think his timing is better. Mm-hmm. I think he's much more accurate. I think he throws more fundamentally sound punches. I think his footwork is better. He throws the most beautiful backstepping rear hand in MMA, except for Conor McGregor's. Conor McGregor is the gold standard for that punch. Stipe Miocic, I think, throws the second best.
He's hurt a few guys with that. It wasn't the Verdum fight that unveiled that punch for him. In fact,
he landed it a bunch against Overeem afterward. He landed it beforehand against Arlovski. He has been working on that punch for a long time, and it's finally clicked for him.
Yeah, in fact, that Verdum KO was strikingly similar, no pun intended, to his knockout over Phil DeFries in his second UFC fight, mm-hmm. Which, it was a slightly different position, but he's been using that punch for a long time, and I think I agree, getting better at it. Defensively, I think defense is a big part of boxing, and I think both of these guys are pretty poor defensively, if we're being honest. Like, neither has great head movement or really good awareness in the pocket of what punches are coming their way. I think both guys rely a lot on footwork, like on making space to get away from shots.
Yeah, they're both very first line of defensive fighters. Neither one of them connect. I think both of them can be sound defensively, but they have a good time being both offensive and defensive simultaneously, if that makes sense. Like, if you stand in front of Miocic and throw punches at him and he's like, okay, I'm not going to throw back, I'm just going to avoid these punches, he can do that. Like, you can see him get his head moving in the pocket, but trying to get him to throw punches off of that is basically impossible. And after he throws punches, his head is basically right there. Junior, if you come after him, he can move his head. He can do that. He can slip and roll and do all that shit, but he can't do it he can't really do it as he's throwing. He does it more now than he used to. And he can't really make his defense turn into offense all that well.
Yeah, I do think his head moves a little better just as a result of the way he throws his punches. Miocic is pretty
he's got head movement built into his punches.
Yeah, Miocic is
it's
kind of
hard to catch him with same time shots.
A straight line puncher where the head stays in place more or less as he throws. Whereas Dos Santos, if he's throwing a body jab or an overhand, the head is changing position as he throws. So it's a little better in that regard. But both guys really, there's not that strong link between defense and offense. We've talked about Miocic's improvements with a little more detail. I think the one that both of us are probably most looking forward to talking about, though, is JDS's improvements. Because for a long, long time, since, I guess, 2012, when he first had his first rematch with Cain Velasquez, we started to realize that there was a big problem in the way that Junior Dos Santos fought, especially in the way that he dealt with pressure. And when Miocic had Miocic's biggest moments of success in their first fight, his first fight with JDS, was when he was pressuring, when he had Junior against the fence, when he had him backing up. That was when he enjoyed success, just like Cain. And the problem was, I think, the big thing was cagecraft or generalship, like not just the ability to control distance, to control your whereabouts in the ring, but even just awareness of whereabouts in the ring. I think Junior lacked in those first that first rematch with Cain, and up until the fight, I think, with Alistair Overeem. At that point, I think it was clearly a work in progress, but not complete enough to really show up. And it wasn't until the Ben Rothwell fight that, as you said, we finally saw that transition to boxer. What did you see in the Rothwell fight that made you think that he's finally getting it? He's finally turning the corner on all these problems I've been seeing for the past 5 years.
So the biggest one was something that you just mentioned, and that's awareness, that he was hyper aware of where he was relative to the fence, and he had a sense of urgency about it, right? Yeah. So when he felt himself get close to the fence, he got out of there as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So as late as the Miocic fight, you would see Dos Santos get pressured back to the fence, and he would take a split second too long to realize where he was and to think, okay, I got to get the hell out of here, and he would eat 2 shots in that frame.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't sound like that much because he was still getting out of there with a quickness, like it wasn't as bad as it had been beforehand. But even as late as that fight, if you play that out 20 times over the course of the fight, Junior probably ate 20 to 30 shots that he didn't need to eat from Stipe Miocic simply as a result of not having that urgency and not having that awareness of where he was. So that went from being a fight that Junior should have won real handily to a close fight, a really close fight.
Yeah.
And we saw that difference, I think, in the Rothwell fight. Rothwell actually did, from a technical perspective, a better job of pressuring Junior than Stipe had for most of their fight. And Rothwell got nothing going against him, basically. He landed only a bare few shots with Junior backed up against the fence.
Yeah, I think he had a little more trouble disguising his entries. He's obviously not as fast as a guy like Miocic. A little weirder, perhaps a little more obvious, although a little trickier and more unorthodox as well. But he was cutting off the cage fairly well. He was trying to counter with kicks and other shots, and Dos Santos just broke him down. And to do that, he had to make sure that Rothwell could not gain any headway. He had to keep him on the end of a body. I mean, it was, let's be honest, that may be the best body punching performance we've ever seen in MMA. There's not a ton of contention or a ton of competition for that title because body punching, I think, still has a long way to go in MMA. But Dos Santos, I think, landed, let me see if I can remember the numbers off the top of my head, 157 significant strikes, which I believe was a 5-round heavyweight record. And I think around 90 of them were body shots, which is insane. Yep. That is that most fighters don't come close to having 50% of their strikes be body shots. The majority of Juniors were body shots.
Yeah, 92 body shots he landed.
That is insane. And a lot of that just straight jabs and straight right hands. And I have said this for a long time with regarding a lot of different fighters, but if you're trying to avoid someone tying you up, which Rothwell did want to do. His coaches were admonishing him to go for some kind of takedown, and he could just never get in the range to try it. Or if you're trying to swarm someone against the fence, which Rothwell was also trying to do, one of the best things you can have in your arsenal is a body jab. And Junior has always had a great body jab. but I don't think he's always used it very well defensively.
Or strategically, frankly.
Or strategically, right. It's always been a moment-by-moment tactic for him. Like, ever since the beginning of his UFC career, because Luis Doria obviously did a great job coaching Junior as far as offensive tactics are concerned. He has always been a clever puncher, If you give him the space, if you respect his power, and you allow him the time to work, then he's going to throw the body jab. He's going to feint low and come over with the overhand right. Then he's going to throw the left hook to keep you guessing and come back with the uppercut because you're worried about the overhand. Everything plays off of what comes before. He's good at that and always has been.
He's always had the instincts of a puncher. And as a tactician, he's not a bad tactician at all. Like, he's good at reading you. He's a good organic puncher. Like the Gilbert Yvel knockout.
Yes.
Which has been on Junior's highlight reel forever, is a perfect example of an incredibly physically talented guy who has the right sense for what shots to throw when.
Yes, yeah. Or that beautiful short left hook he used to knock out Gabriel Gonzaga way back in 2010.
Even the Verdum uppercut. Like, he had a good sense for when Verdum was going to duck and when to throw that punch.
Yeah, or the uppercut against Roy Nelson that knocked him down. Like, yeah, since the beginning of Junior Dos Santos' UFC career, we've been seeing that kind of stuff. The difference has been, as you said, the strategy with which he has employed it. And he has not ever shown that ability to manage distance with a body jab. And I've said for a long time that a body jab is one of the best weapons you can have in your arsenal for maintaining distance and also for threatening wrestlers. That was like the main thing I was calling for and putting my face in my palms about its absence when Jessica Ai fought Miocic Tate, because she had a lot of good moments in that fight and just refused to mix up her jab. She just kept throwing it for the top of Mioci's head. And I thought, if you just throw it at her chest or just throw it at her gut, because the difference is that you get the reach of the jab. You don't lose any distance by throwing for somebody's body. As long as you change levels.
You gain distance.
Yeah.
Like, it's a longer punch than a jab to the head is.
Yeah. You just have to make sure you change levels. You get your shoulder on line with the target, which Junior does very well. And you wear somebody down, often more effectively than you can. Like, I think Junior Dos Santos probably wouldn't have hurt Rothwell at all if he had just attacked the head. But he wore the body down and then started to land really punishing shots that surprised Rothwell upstairs.
And that's also a strategy that if you're Junior Dos Santos in 2016, 2017, like, Junior shouldn't want to brawl at this point. That it doesn't play to his strengths. He's not as durable as he used to be. He can't take punches, especially to his kind of fragile nose, the way that he used to. Like, he probably can't work at the pace that he used to either. I mean, he's like 33 years old at this point.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to be a little more careful if you're Junior Dos Santos, and you got to play to your strengths. And at this point, your strengths are craft. Like, he's a crafty fighter. And so, like, that, and craft is going to matter more
that body
the longer
jab,
the fight goes.
That body jab was always a setup in the past. That's the thing. And in this fight, it doubled as something else. It was still a setup. He still used it to land some beautiful right hands over the top. But the fact that it has stopping power because it lands center mass, it's like the way they train people who are going to be shooting guns, that if they have to shoot somebody, they shoot center mass because that is the most likely to stop someone. A body jab is the same concept. It's very difficult to step right through it because it hits you right in your center of gravity. It's very difficult to change levels. In fact, you might duck into it if you try to change levels. And it's distance control and takedown defense and a setup for other shots, all wrapped into one. And so it is a very versatile punch for purposes of control. And that was the one thing that Junior had never really used it for.
Yeah, and it gives you enough time after you throw it to either follow it up with something or, and this is really important, to sidestep. Like, we haven't really touched on this yet. Junior's footwork is so much better. Like, he was a straight line fighter until about 2015, until the Overeem fight. I don't think he really knew how to pivot. And now
I still don't think he does it very often. I mean,
he did it all the time in the Rothwell fight. He pivoted, he cut angles, he sidestepped. Like, he was doing a lot of pivoting. As Rothwell was getting his back to the fence, Junior would throw the body jab, step to the outside, pivot, and get back into open space. Two quick pivots right after the other.
That's true. They were small pivots that we saw from him, like pivoting off the jab. There were some nice instances of that. Not a lot of like. So here's the other thing. Here's the thing that I want to see from Junior. Like, this is the next evolution for me of where his outfighting game might go, is just being willing to step into his opponent. I think that's the last thing that he has ever wanted to do, because he does like his, at least against someone who's pressuring him. You know what I mean? Because he does like that space. Like when he fought Cain Velasquez, he'd like to have space to let his punches go, to throw with full power at full extension. That's the kind of shots he likes to land. And Velasquez never gave him that. And in the portions of their fight that Stipe was winning, Stipe never gave him that either. He was just in his face and made it really difficult for Junior to let go punches the way he wants to. And so I think it has always put Junior into a very defensive mode, where we saw in that Rothwell fight, when he's thinking defensively, he's not at his best. He wasn't thinking defensively against Rothwell. Like, he wasn't thinking, I can't throw punches. He was using his punches defensively, and it worked very well. But like in the worst moments against Cain and Stipe, it was when Junior was caught standing up tall, back against the fence, feet out of position, just like trying as hard as he could to get even farther away at the point at which there was no more space to be gained.
That's a really excellent point, because there's a lot to be said for this. If your opponent is trying to clinch you, it behooves you to cut them off at the pass and get there first, and to initiate the clinch on your terms.
Yes.
Which allows you to either do some damage, which Junior can do. Junior is not a bad clinch fighter.
No.
Like, he throws nice elbows inside. He throws nice knees. He's real strong when he can get an underhook on you and can jack up on that underhook.
He's got some decent takedowns too.
Yeah, he hits a real nice outside trip when he's trying to. Like, he's not a bad clinch fighter, and so it would behoove him as Stipe tries to pressure, because that's a brilliant point, Connor. I think you're exactly right about this. Like, when they get close to you, that's fine. Change levels. You be the one to grab the underhook.
Yeah,
and then jack up on your underhook, turn them around to the fence, land a shot, break off, and create space.
It's a perfect way to avoid damage, because you can enter the clinch off of a slip. You know, somebody throws a big, hard, overcommitted punch because they think you're vulnerable. You slip under it, and you've got a clinch right there. They've just thrown themselves into it, and you have the stronger position. And
that was something Anthony Joshua did a fantastic job of against Vladimir Klitschko, was he knew Klitschko was going to try and clinch him. So knowing that, he initiated a lot of the clinches and got the position that he wanted in those clinches, which allowed him to avoid the kind of wearing, grinding aspect that Klitschko really relies on, and has even more in his later career.
Yeah, because if you're fighting somebody who wants to clinch you, or wants to close the gap, or wants to put you against the fence, and they're good, and they can take a shot, eventually they will have success. And they will probably have a lot of successes over the course of your fight. There is no way to stop that altogether. So it always does kind of worry me when I hear a fighter going into a fight, and they're like, oh, my goal is to stay as far away from them as much as possible. And it's just not an attainable goal. Like, you're gonna be disappointed pretty quickly. But the way around it is not to think, okay, I need to be even better at constantly running away, at constantly evading, at constantly making them chase me. The way around it is to think, how do I reset? And the way to reset, if you want to create distance, is to close it on your terms. So I think that's the next thing for Junior that I would like to see, is a little more pivoting, less of that loping sidestep stuff against the fence, although he definitely was better in that regard against Rothwell, and more just closing the distance, stepping into a clinch, then turning, and then disengaging and going back to open space. I think he could be a phenomenally good boxing-based MMA fighter if he added that to his game. He's already phenomenally good. So
So what do you think about this matchup, Connor? We've spent a lot of time talking about the guys individually. Yeah. How do you see them matching up in the year of our Lord 2017?
Well, you've been reading too many history books, my friend. Anno Domini 2017. We have evidence to tell us how this fight will play out, right? We have another fight that they've already competed in. It was a fucking classic. It was a great fight. So I expect it to be a lot of fun. But I do want to remind people that their first fight was surprisingly competitive. And I think that's why it stood out as like a great performance from Miocic. But it was a fight that Dos Santos clearly won 3 rounds and arguably won 4. I think he did have the better moments. And so I think what we're looking at here is a fairly difficult matchup for Stipe Miocic, because I think to beat Junior, he has to pressure. I don't think that's what he wants to do most. He certainly showed that he's gotten a little more comfortable doing it in his fight with Overeem, but we've already mentioned that when he's attacking, that is when he is arguably at his most vulnerable. And indeed, Overeem hit him with some pretty hellacious shots while Miocic was trying to close the gap. Junior can probably do that as well, and also not fold the way Overeem did under that pressure, especially if he can show the same improvements he showed against Rothwell. And then typically for Miocic, he likes to mix in his wrestling to keep people guessing, but he had a very hard time out wrestling Junior in their first fight. In fact, they went 1-for-1. They went 1-1 on takedown attempts. Junior actually took Miocic down at one point, and Miocic's strategy of trying to wear Junior down with the wrestling almost seemed to work against him, because in addition to stuffing every shot he tried, Junior was working him to the body. And I think we'll see even more of that this time around. So I think we are going to have some crazy exchanges early, but I think by about the end of the second round, Junior Dos Santos will start to take over this fight, if he can recreate the form he showed against Rothwell.
Yeah, I'm very much in agreement with that. I think the changes that they've made to their games make this an even tougher matchup for Miocic than it was the first time around. Because the first time around, this matchup basically looked like a matchup between a sprawling brawler and kind of a jack of all trades who wasn't quite an overpowering enough wrestler to impose his takedown game on Dos Santos, which made it basically a boxing match. Mm-hmm. That favored Junior's greater speed and power, mm-hmm. And output too. I mean, Miocic works at a good pace. Dos Santos has always been an exceptionally well-conditioned, high-paced kind of fighter.
Yeah.
And this time the matchup looks more like a jack of all trades against an outboxer who is not, and where the jack of all trades is not quite comfortable enough with pressure and not quite diverse enough with his pressure to be able to constantly put Dos Santos on the fence. And even if he does put him there, that leaves his best punch kind of out of his wheelhouse. Like, I don't think Dos Santos is going to give him a lot of opportunities to land that backstepping right hand.
Yeah.
Which is basically the punch that's Miocic's money punch, more or less.
Yeah. I mean, he fought an entire fight with Ben Rothwell, barely taking more than one forward step at a time. Like, everything was disciplined, everything was contained, everything was step in, step back out. Step in with a jab, step back out. Step in with a right hand, pivot off to the side. Let Ben Rothwell come forward and retreat as you throw your jabs. Everything was very, very disciplined and very focused on the idea of distance management. So I think it's going to be difficult, I agree, for Miocic to land that. And while he does have a good selection of other punches, the defense... The fact that defense is not married to his punches is a bigger problem for him than it is for Dos Santos. Like, Dos Santos is going to be safer while he's throwing than Miocic is while he's throwing, if you know what I mean.
Yes, exactly. Because Dos Santos is hittable on the counter.
Yeah.
But and always has been. But that's mostly when he's backing up. It's mostly when he's trying to back you off with a counter combination as you're coming forward. So you move forward, Dos Santos plants and throws, and then you just hit him after he's done throwing because he expects that that's going to be enough to back you off.
Yes.
He doesn't really do that much anymore.
He didn't do it much against Rothwell. It will be a different kind of fight. Like, I am wary of buying too much into what we saw against Rothwell because, again, Miocic is going to be a lot more straightforward with his boxing attack. He's going to keep a much closer distance, I think, just by the nature of his style. And I think he is going to be a lot faster in covering the distance. But, yeah, we didn't see that kind of stuff against Rothwell. Not nearly as much of it. We saw a lot more, like, staying low, knees bent, in a good defensive position, defensible position at least, after exchanges against Rothwell. So we may have a changing of the championship here if both of us are correct. We both like Junior Dos Santos. What is your final prediction, Pat?
I think it's going to be Dos Santos by 5-round decision. The one thing that I would like to see a little more from him is he has kind of switched over to this tight, disciplined approach. And we saw this against Overeem, too, where he didn't really go crazy. I would like to see him flurry a little bit more when Miocic backs up. And Miocic will back up at some point because he's not an exclusive pressure fighter who's going to just keep swarming you and swarming you and swarming you. Like, when Miocic gives Dos Santos some space, when he stops moving forward, I would like to see Dos Santos go after him a little bit more. Because when Miocic backs up, I'm not saying go after him recklessly, but if you can kind of slowly but surely push him back, when Miocic hits the fence, I want to see one of those like patented Junior Dos Santos 6 or 8 punch flurries that he used to throw so gorgeously. And if he does that, then I think he finishes Miocic. But I think the more likely outcome is him just staying real tight, real disciplined, and slowly but surely picking the pace up as we get into the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. And at that point, I don't think Miocic can quite compete with him.
I think we're going to see Miocic slowly wear down from the pace and from body shots. And I think that if he can throw body shots with the kind of consistency he threw against Rothwell, it will have a similar effect, but against a less durable fighter than Big Ben. So I think a 4th round TKO might be in order. But
I'm certainly looking forward to it.
Yeah,
this is one of the, like we said earlier, this is a fantastic heavyweight title fight. Been looking forward to this for a long time.
I mean, even if we're both predicting essentially the same result as last time, the last one was an amazing fight. Like, it was ridiculously fun to watch.
Yeah, if it hadn't been for Lawler, or for the 2 Lawler-Hendricks fights and Lawler-Brown, for all of those kinds of matchups in 2014, this would have been a consensus fight of the year.
Yeah, and it was absolutely in the conversation. So how can you not be excited about seeing it run back? Let's take a break, Pat, and when we come back, we're going to talk about that women's strawweight fight, one that I am exceedingly excited for, between defending champion Joanna Jedrzejczyk and tough challenger Jedrzejczyk-Andrade. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it. Welcome back to Heavy Hands. I'm nervous about this one, Pat. I'm nervous about making a pick here, if I'm being honest. We've got Jedrzejczyk versus Andrade. It's, well, you know, like, get that Alden McGregor vibe, because I know it's a dangerous fight, but I'm a really big fan of Joanna Jedrzejczyk. You know, beyond the analyst level, she's one of my favorite fighters. So
I met her in person for the first time last week, and she is delightful.
I'm sure, man. She's awesome on every level, dude.
Fantastic.
She's terrifying.
Also tiny. It's always striking when you see like lighter weight fighters in person, and you realize that they are just minuscule human beings.
You meet Demetrius Johnson, you're like, this is the greatest fighter in the world right now, and he's like,
yeah, but Demetrius Johnson is like fairly thick. Like he's short, like he's very, very short. He's a very small man, but he's got some heft to him.
He looks like a normal person, just smaller.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. He looks like a normal person scaled down. Joanna is very like bird-like. You know, she seems almost like frail. You know, she's not. Like, obviously, you watch her fight. Like, she's very strong, very well conditioned, like very physically, like physically imposing in the cage relative to her competition. But she seems really small.
She wiry.
I mean,
but you know,
I don't know what it says that like I'm probably twice her size, so maybe I need to lose some weight. But like,
yeah, well, you know, I think you're doing fine. You weigh less than me. I think that should be your metric for weight loss. Just as long as you do the show, is just try to weigh less than Connor.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'll set that peg up. I'll set that peg up and go around it.
I mean, maybe is an unfair standard because I think you're naturally a larger man than me, but I'm also currently a fatter man than you, so it is what it is. I'm nervous about picking this fight, Pat. Like, I'm nervous about it because I know that Jedrzejczyk-Andrade is a uniquely difficult matchup for Joanna Jedrzejczyk. She hits very hard. She throws about as much volume as Joanna. She throws a lot. And we have not seen any signs yet that she slows down because of that. despite the weight cut to strawweight. She threw a shitload of punches in the third round against Angela Hill, despite the fact that the first 2 rounds were already at a crazy pace. So unless the championship rounds are much different, I expect her to be able to maintain her pace more or less for a 5-round fight. And she also throws combinations to head and body, which is not something Joanna is used to. And we've now seen Joanna hurt in 2 of her last 2 fights. She was dropped with a sort of flash knockdown from a jab in the opening seconds against Claudia Gadelha. Wasn't exactly hurt, but she was certainly, her legs were taken out from under her. And she was pretty badly hurt by a right hand from Karolina Kowalkiewicz, basically the one clean shot that Kowalkiewicz landed. If Andrade can pressure the way that Kowalkiewicz sometimes did when she was effective there, and she will, I think, and if she can land with more power than Kowalkiewicz, which I think she will, and put the kind of pressure on Joanna that Claudia Gadelha did, but with strikes instead of wrestling that wears her out, then I think it's a very difficult fight for the champion.
Yeah, we've already seen in her last 2 fights, Andrade absolutely dismantle the 2 most skilled outside fighters in this division. Yeah. Because I would consider Joanna more of a boxer puncher. She's more of a jack of all striking trades than she is somebody who really likes to be sitting outside, sticking and moving.
Right.
Like Calderwood and Hill are both defined outfighters. That is both what they want to be doing. They want to be sticking you at range. They want to be moving. They want to. They're long. They throw long shots. They're both pretty quick. They want to keep you outside and roll like that. Joanna, who is not nearly as defined with her preferences in that direction, though she's probably more skilled than either of those 2 fighters, does not have the same kind of innate built-in preference for doing that. And we saw Andrade walk through both of those fighters' preferences and make it seem like they had no options.
Yeah, and Angela Hill fight, I think, is really one to consider when discussing this fight, because it was a good showing from Angela Hill. You know, like, she's been getting better and better with each fight, and she had a lot of moments. You know, she had a lot of little moments, and she had a lot of the right ideas and what to do against such an aggressive, stocky, and hard-hitting fighter, and she just didn't win a round. You know, like, she had a lot of good moments as somebody who I think is maybe a little less skilled, but more comfortable sticking to an outfighting style than the champion, and she didn't win a round. So it's certainly, I have to imagine that Joanna and the folks at ATT have watched that fight very carefully when formulating the game plan for this fight.
Because we saw Jedrzejczyk in her last fight against Kowalkiewicz do a better job of maintaining distance and a better job of feeling urgency when her back was close to the fence than she has necessarily in past fights.
Sure.
She had a better sense for that. And you have to imagine with another camp under her belt, knowing what Andrade is going to try to do to her, she will have made improvements. But at the same time, Andrade is not your typical pressure fighter because, first of all, there's the volume. Second of all, there's the relentlessness. And third of all, her triggers are so good.
Yeah.
If you try to throw to back her off, not only does she throw back at you, and I think this is the defining thing about Andrade's game that makes her so good, is she moves into her counters.
Yeah.
She doesn't plant her feet and throw back at you. She moves in. She follows your counter back to the source with more than one punch at a time.
Yeah, always more than one. She is very much a female John Lineker in that regard.
I think she actually is better than Lineker at that particular thing that she does.
You were going to piss some people off with that statement.
I know, but I'm saying from a technical perspective, I think
I agree.
That in terms of the following the shot back, like moving in with the shot, right? So like so both Andrade and Lineker are always going to be at a height disadvantage relative to their opponents, and their opponent is basically always going to want to be operating at a longer range than them. So that means you're just not going to reach if you just plant your feet and throw back when they throw at you, right? So you've got to follow the shot back, but that's a lot easier said than done because it's movement in multiple dimensions. You're not moving in a straight line. You have to anticipate the direction that your opponent's going to move as they pull their strike back.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, is what Andrade is even better at than Lineker, is anticipating your movement back, seeing where you are relative to the fence, seeing what are your escape angles, anticipating and guessing what your escape angle is going to be, and then moving you into her counter shot.
Yeah, I'd say that Lineker is probably a little better at cutting off the cage and putting you into a position from the start where he doesn't have to pursue you as much.
Yeah.
But Andrade is certainly better at covering distance with combinations. That was a terrifying thing, I'm sure, for Angela Hill in their fight, was the fact that Andrade she's not a counter puncher really, but she does wait for you to commit before she throws. She just doesn't really expect. I mean, I guess that makes her kind of an aggressive counter puncher, but she really just wants to bull rush you into the fence. And so Angela Hill had to commit to something to keep Andrade off of her. She had no choice but to sit down and throw a shot at some point. And the moment she did, Andrade was like 8 punches in the space of a second and a half. Like, it's always a long combination. She's a fairly accurate puncher, surprisingly so, even when she's like chasing you around the ring, around the cage. And she mixes up her targets, and she punches equally well with both hands. So there's a lot of things to worry about when you're thinking of backing Jessica Andrade off. And the reason that I think we should maybe explore that idea that Joanna Jedrzejczyk is not quite the outfighter that Angela Hill is, despite probably being technically a better striker, is that I think she really likes to stand and trade, not necessarily if it means taking a bunch of shots, but Joanna Jedrzejczyk's response to pressure is very rarely like the thing we talked about with Dos Santos against Rothwell. It's very rarely stick a jab or stick a hard counter and sidestep as you throw it and just constantly readjust and make the person attacking you turn and turn and turn and just never let them line up. That is not something Jedrzejczyk does.
She can do that, but it takes her a round or two to get it into her head that she has to do that.
And even then, she likes to sit there and throw 4 strikes. You know, she likes to hit that jab and then throw a right hand, left hook to the body and come back with a leg kick.
It's because Joanna at heart is a Dutch stylist.
Yes.
When you break her down to the most basic level, she is a drilled rote combination striker. And if you've been drilled like that for the past, I think she's been doing it, since she was 15 or 16?
Yeah.
Like, if you've been doing that for 15 years, when somebody throws at you, your first response is always going to be, okay, I'm going to brush that first shot aside, and then I've got 4 more coming back at you, then I move, right? Yeah. It's not stick, one shot, move. Stick, one shot, move.
She does what Ernesto Host would have done, which is who she came up under as a kickboxer. And we have seen that in all of her fights. That is her baseline response to that kind of pressure. And I think she's going to have a hard time making that work if she can't stop herself from doing that against somebody who throws the same kind of volume but hits a lot harder. And there's going to be a low target that might be difficult for her to hit with those usually like those quick flurries of punches. Joanna's all about snap and speed with her strikes. She's very quick, and she's got pop that makes it snaps your head back when she hits you, but she doesn't crush you with power. She's not a particularly hard puncher, and Andrade is. So I think the exchanges, if they are exchanges where both women are throwing a similar number of punches, they have to favor Jessica Andrade.
Yeah, I think if you're going to win this fight, if you're Jedrzejczyk and you're going to win this fight, you have got to pile up volume with kicks at long range. You've got to kick, move, sit down on 2 shots, kick, move. And that's just got to be your thing. And you've got to trust that if you kick the crap out of Andrade's legs, because Andrade's legs are there to be kicked. She has been kicked repeatedly and effectively.
She's not a great defensive fighter in any regard, but kicks in particular. I mean, if you're going to pick something that she's not going to defend, pick the one that's hardest for her to counter. Yeah,
exactly. And so I think there is a game plan here that Jedrzejczyk can follow. I think she's an exceptionally well-trained fighter. I think she's an exceptionally coachable fighter.
Yeah.
That if you look at her in the corner, she takes instruction really well. And she's at a camp that I think is probably right now one of the 2 best at game planning, might actually be the best at game planning in ATT. She's working a lot with Mike Brown, and I think Mike Brown is a brilliantly underrated head coach in the sport.
I agree.
And so I don't think they have any illusions about what the challenge is. I don't think they have any illusions about what the game plan is. I think Joanna has the skills to execute it. It's a question of, can she get herself in the right frame of mind to execute it? And I think she can. I think it's going to be tough. I think she's going to eat a lot of shots, especially in the first 2 rounds. I think she's probably going to lose at least one of the first 2 rounds, but I think she will eventually get herself on track, because I just don't believe that Andrade can do that against a striker that skilled for 5 rounds. I can't believe it, that she's not going to tire, that she's not going to wear down, that that punishment to the legs and body is not going to have an effect. She can't just be a Terminator.
Yeah, I'll say one other thing before I give my prediction, which is I think that to complement the kicking-based strategy that you just laid out, I think Joanna should think about this the way that Thai fighters think about fighting boxers. And I think that she should rely on her kicks, low kicks, body kicks, all that. The occasional high kick, why the hell not? At range. Things that, in fact, high kicks are an underrated weapon. As an aside, an underrated weapon for somebody who does not want to deal with a boxer. People worry about them because they make them feel unbalanced, but it's hard to counter a high kick because you got to keep your hands by your head to make sure you don't get, kicked in it. So it's actually surprisingly hard to counter a high kick, and it's also hard to catch. So I think that would be an effective weapon for her. She's got a really good front kick as well. Things that she can use to maintain distance and wear Andrade down. I think playing off of what we said about Dos Santos, she's going to have to step in. And instead of exchanging with punches, I think she should force the clinch when Andrade gets close. Angela Hill had some success doing that. Jedrzejczyk-Andrade is very strong, but Joanna is probably the best clinch fighter in this division.
She's also way stronger than Angela Hill is.
Yeah,
this was something I didn't realize as that fight was going down, but it was something a friend of the show, Stephen Wright, was talking about afterwards, that Hill is basically a natural atom weight. Like, she walks around at 115, 120 pounds. Wow. She is a small fighter. And Andrade, whenever they tied up, you could see that strength difference. It was obvious.
It was like Tim Boach. Like she did some redneck judo on her, just kind of flinging her around in the tie-ups. Jedrzejczyk cuts a significant amount of weight to make 115. And we have seen in other fights that she has some deceiving, wiry strength to her frame.
Claudia Gadelha is probably the biggest, thickest strawweight in that division. And Jedrzejczyk did not look overpowered by her in the clinch.
Nope.
And I think Andrade may actually be a little stronger than Gadelha. And she certainly got a lower center of gravity. But I think if anybody can deal with Andrade in tight, it's going to be Jedrzejczyk. If she can't, then there's nobody in the division who can.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's going to be, no matter what, even if she's at a strength disadvantage there, Andrade's wrestling is not good enough on a technical level to make that a less ideal position than the pocket, right? Joanna's going to be safer tying Andrade up than she is standing right on the end of her punches or inside of mid-range. So I think we need to see, for Joanna to win, I think she needs to, work those kicks from the outside, try to deny as many boxing exchanges as possible, and when that isn't an option, when Andrade comes forward with a flurry, step in, tie her up, and hit her with elbows before breaking away. Angela Hill dropped Jedrzejczyk-Andrade with an elbow, by the way, very briefly, sort of a flash knockdown, but she did catch her with a hard elbow. It's certainly possible.
Yeah, that's that's another thing that we need to bear in mind here. Andrade does not take a great shot. She's tough, but she is vulnerable to eating a flash shot like that. Yeah,
she has great recoverability, if you put it like that. Like Frankie Edgar or like Wanderlei Silva, but like both of those guys, she can be dropped. She can be stung, and she has been in a few fights.
Yeah. So, I'm really looking forward to this. I think this is on paper the toughest stylistic matchup for Jedrzejczyk. I think if she wins this, then suddenly we're going to be talking about her as an all-time great type of champion.
Yeah. What's your final prediction here?
I'm going with Jedrzejczyk by increasingly wide decision or potentially a 4th or 5th round knockout.
Yeah, I hope so, but I am taking the challenger here. I'm going to pick.
Ooh,
I think so. It's head against heart, you know what I mean? Like, I will be rooting for Joanna Jedrzejczyk. And perhaps my fondness for her as a fighter and a person is part of what, makes me, like, agonize over this so much. But I've been through Aldo McGregor, man. I've been through that once before. I've done the Macaulay Culkin while watching a terrible result play out. I don't want to be unprepared for it again. And I do think that seeing Joanna get clipped by fighters who are not as aggressive or powerful as Andrade, seeing her get backed up by flurries early in the fight, and seeing how she responds to the option, the opportunity to exchange punches, I think she may have a deficit that's too much to overcome by the time she gets to that fourth round. Mm-hmm. And if she can't finish Andrade there, she hasn't been a super prolific finisher as a champion. So against tougher fighters, and Andrade is tough. She may get dropped, but she is tough. And I think Joanna may get dropped as well. So I'm taking Andrade by a unanimous decision. I do think it will be increasingly not her fight as it goes into the later rounds. Because even if I haven't seen her slow down much, nobody can match the stamina of Jedrzejczyk. She is insanely well conditioned.
It's going to be really interesting. The thing that I keep thinking about here is so we've talked about the things that Jedrzejczyk hasn't faced before in Andrade. There are a lot of things here that Andrade hasn't had to face either.
True.
The biggest one being that couple of inches of extra reach in the hands of somebody who knows how to use her reach. That was something that we saw a lot when Kowalkiewicz tried to come after her, was she was coming up 2-3 inches shy every time. That was why Kowalkiewicz had so much trouble landing shots.
True.
It was Jedrzejczyk did a great job of managing distance.
And we could call that a weird performance from Kowalkiewicz, who was she was bizarrely unwilling to come forward and pressure. But I think you could also say that some of that was beaten out of her.
It got beaten out of her, and I just rewatched that fight. In the first 7.5 minutes of that fight, she got shit kicked to the extent that she didn't want to come forward anymore.
Yeah, and normally, the Kowalkiewicz is a very tough fighter who tends to see. I think what probably happened is though that she was having so little success. You know what I mean? Kowalkiewicz has always struck me as a fighter who, when she sees, she's not like a naturally great pressure fighter per se, but when she sees that something works, she will keep doing it. And
she's a gamer of a fighter, man. She does a real good job of reacting in the fight and sensing opportunities.
Yeah.
She's got the finishing. She's got the instincts of somebody like Ricardo Lamas, where they just jump on you when they smell blood. Yeah. But Kowalkiewicz just can't really hurt you all that much.
Yeah, and she didn't see anything. If like a lot of her go-get-emness, Jesus Christ, is based on the idea, a lot of her get up and go, it comes from the idea that something works, so she'll keep pursuing it, then you can see why that fight played out the way it did, because nothing worked until the big right hand in the fourth. She didn't land.
And even then, she still probably lost that round.
Yeah. There's a very good case against her winning that round, despite landing that big shot. But I don't think Andrade is going to have the same kind of issue. We don't know, right? We haven't seen Andrade fight somebody in this division against whom nothing has worked, but I think she's innately designed with the way she pressures forward and throws combinations to find early success in the way that Kowalkiewicz could not.
Oh God, what a freaking matchup, man. I'm so stoked for this.
It's an outstanding fight, man. These top two fights are just, the rest of the card could suck. I'm almost certain that it won't, but it could have been a completely garbage undercard, and I would have happily shelled out $60 for these two fights. So that's it. It's over. I've committed the worst sin I could have possibly committed. I've picked against Joanna Jedrzejczyk, and I feel bad about it, but it'll be a little bit of cold comfort if indeed she does lose her title this Saturday. Why don't we take one more break, and when we come back, one more fight from this main card to discuss that we have not yet covered. I'm talking about Henry Cejudo versus Sergio Pettis after this break. Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. And you can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show. Okay, Pat, we're back. Let's go ahead and dive in. Cejudo versus Pettis. I'm going to let you take this one away.
I'm really interested in this fight, mostly because Sergio Pettis is finally turning into the fighter that he was kind of cracked up to be back when he was first coming into the UFC. This is a classic example of too much too soon for a really young guy. And now everybody's kind of forgotten, Sergio Pettis is pretty good. He's been at this for quite a while. We've had our conversations about young veterans. Sergio Pettis is in the process of becoming a young veteran.
Sure.
Like, he's been fighting grown men basically since he was 15, probably longer than that if you count sparring sessions at Rufus Sport.
Yeah.
He's been a pro since he was 18.
And we know
he's
what
been
kind
in
of
the UFC
sparring
since he was 20.
We know what kind of sparring they do at Rufus Sport too.
Yeah. So, like, he's not a perfect fighter, but I think he's basically turned into the guy he's going to be at this point. And that's a pretty good fighter. That's a pretty dang good fighter. Now, he's facing Henry Cejudo, who has lost 2 in a row. I thought he beat Benavidez.
Me too.
I scored that fight for him.
Me too. Even with the point deduction, I thought he got the win. But it was certainly a different Cejudo than we saw against Demetrius Johnson. Or really
it was a
any
Cejudo who became the fighter he's supposed to become.
Yes. Yeah, he was working with I'll try to find the name here next time that you're going, but he worked with a new Muay Thai coach before that fight for 8 weeks. And that's what we got, is a guy who went in there and just slugged it the fuck out with Joseph Benavidez, the perennial #1 contender, which that in itself is insanely impressive to me.
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome. Like, the question with Cejudo has never been his talent, and I've been following his career since literally the very beginning of it. Like, he was on that first prospect list I did, like my first real MMA project.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been following him since then, every step of his career. And the question has always been, where is his head at? How hard is he working? That's what has always come across. It's never been, does Cejudo have the talent to be one of the greatest of all time? Like, it's obvious that he does. He has all the talent in the world. And I think we're finally starting to see him scratch the surface of it. He had only been fighting as a pro for like 3.5 years when he fought Demetrius Johnson. That is at the same stage in his career. Georges St. Pierre was getting that tight split decision win over BJ Penn. That same stage in his career, Anthony Pettis was just about to fight Benson Henderson for the first time. Like, when he gets tossed in there with one of the 3 greatest fighters in the history of mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
And he gets dismantled. And now some guys crumble from that. Instead, Cejudo comes back, takes it as a challenge, and becomes an infinitely better fighter.
Yeah, I think that's why I think we said this before that Demetrius Johnson fight. I remember discussing this in some form. But the idea that, like, some guys are not ready to be thrown to the wolves. Like, if they threw Sergio Pettis to Demetrius Johnson 2 years ago, it would have been a terrible idea. I think it might have shattered him for good, to be outclassed. You know what I mean? Because he has an excuse, basically, for every loss he has experienced. He just got caught, or whatever. He was too small, whatever. Demetrius Johnson would have made him feel useless. That is what he does to people. Henry Cejudo, I think, has always been the kind of guy that when there's an opportunity to really prove something, that's when he's the best. And I think he probably underestimated how good Demetrius Johnson was in that first fight, but losing to him, even though it wasn't the result he wanted, it really seems to have lit a serious fire under his ass, and made him angry in a good way, like determined to prove that he is in fact good enough to beat Demetrius Johnson. Which, seeing that fight with Joseph Benavidez, like, does that not make you a lot more excited now at the prospect of a Cejudo Johnson rematch someday?
Yeah, I still think he could be the guy to do it. I think if that happens, it'll be because Johnson has lost a step. But, like, in terms of the guys who are up and coming in this division, it's going to be somebody. Eventually, it'll be somebody, and Cejudo has as good a shot as anybody.
So
that happen.
I think, just to say his name, I think the guy that Cejudo has been working with is a English Muay Thai trainer named Damian Traynor.
That sounds right. I seem to remember Brian Stan saying that name.
Yeah, they haven't really they haven't mentioned it much, and it's difficult to tell. But I think that's the guy that he worked with, and it's clear that he is at least basically doing a lot more of gym hopping and trying new things, trying to get as much as possible to improve his game, which is great. He's not satisfied with just doing the same old because he knows it won't work now. So that is good. For Sergio Pettis, I think he has done a really good job of adapting to the problems that he was having earlier in his career, but I do think some of them still exist. I think Sergio Pettis is still he's undeniably the more technical of the two Pettis brothers, right? Like he's
in terms of fundamentals, yeah.
Yeah, he's a much more fundamentally sound kickboxer than Anthony Pettis, but he does have some of the same problems. I do still think he has problems when he's pressured. We've not really seen anybody be able to effectively do it because there are hardly any pressure fighters in the flyweight division. Perhaps because it's very difficult to pressure people when they move so quickly, and so it hasn't that style hasn't shown up in this division the way it has in some others.
You've either got to be really long or really skilled. So we see it from like Tim Elliott and we see it from Demetrius Johnson, basically.
Yeah, because the big open space of the octagon combined with the speed and size of the fighters, it makes it a lot more difficult to do. But yeah, we do see it occasionally from some of the best, most athletic fighters. And I think we saw a lot of it from Cejudo against Benavidez. Even if he wasn't doing a great job of cage cutting, he was just smashing his way forward. And you know, not doing it with terrible defense either. Like he was certainly getting hit, but he was somewhat aware at least of what was coming back at him as he was throwing. So I think that is going to be a problem here for Sergio. Is getting caught up in those exchanges. Sergio he's a tough dude. Like people don't give him enough credit for that because he's
both of the Pettis brothers. That's true. Are both just rawhide tough.
He's not as durable as Anthony. Anthony can take a ridiculous amount of punishment, but Sergio, like provided that his brain doesn't shut off, is insanely tough. As long as you don't physically prevent him from continuing, his brain will never stop trying to fight. He is a very, very tough guy, and he likes to exchange. Like when you start to come forward, he likes to throw back with a combination. And we've even seen him do surprisingly well in that kind of battle in recent fights. There was a moment, like a very telling moment in this fight with John Moraga, where Moraga, I think, countered a jab with a left hook that missed and then a right hand that cracked Sergio and snapped his head back. And it was like Golovkin versus what was the fight where Golovkin ate a shot as he was knocking the guy out?
It was the one where he was he threw that like coffin nail left hand, right?
No, that was oh my god, I'm just forgetting.
Gil?
Yes, it was Daniel Gil. He hit him with a right hand. It was like a pull counter without the pull. Like his head got smashed back by a right hand, and he like rode the momentum back and knocked Gil out. Sergio did that to John Moraga. He ate a massive shot and then just, even as his head was flying back, smashed the left hand down over the top and hurt the shit out of Moraga. So, like, he's
I think
tough.
That's what Sergio's actually most comfortable doing, though. I think that given his druthers, he would like to be a counterpuncher.
Yeah.
And his brother likes to counter, too, but Sergio is just way more technically sound at it than Anthony is. The problem is defense. Like, that if you're gonna do that, you either need to be unshakably tough or you need to be an exceptional defensive fighter. And while Sergio is tough, he's also he also has a tendency to get shut off. And so as he's waiting to land his beautiful, gorgeous, so smooth 3-4 shot combinations, complete with awesome footwork, like he keeps his feet moving as he throws, he adjusts, he takes great adjustment steps and angles. Like Sergio is the fighter that Duke Roufus has always wanted to create.
Yeah.
But he doesn't quite have the defensive skills. He doesn't move his head very well. He doesn't parry shots all that well. He doesn't put the various layers of his defense together. And that makes him real vulnerable as he's waiting to get those shots off. And if you exchange with him in layers, if you don't just let Sergio have the final word in an exchange, then you can hit him and you can hurt him real bad.
Yeah. So I think we're going to see some of that. And then we also have to consider the wrestling. Cejudo's wrestling hasn't always showed up, but he has also fought a lot of really good defensive wrestlers. And I think Sergio is not quite on that level. Like, in terms, I don't think he's, for example, very physically strong compared to Cejudo. And I think he relies a lot on maintaining distance to stop takedowns. I think when we've seen people actually get in on his hips, they have often managed to get him down without too much trouble. And that'll certainly be easier for Cejudo than it has for many others, as a two-time Olympic gold medalist. But also that the fact that Pettis does like to play guard. And I imagine this will improve at some point, but I have seen him, like part of that young veteran category that we always talk about is like being a tactician, basically, is what it is. Like not being a strategist, being a tactician. You know how to survive in the moment, you know how to counter in the moment, but you lose sight of the fight as a whole. And I think we see signs of that kind of mentality when Sergio goes to the ground, because I have seen numerous examples of someone sitting in his full guard, he has control of them, and he's relatively close to the fence, and where a lot of fighters with a more strategic mind would just walk back and try to wall walk and stand up, Sergio plays guard. I have seen that a few times from him. So there's an opportunity for control and damage there if Cejudo can press the takedowns. But I don't think that Sergio Pettis, like I'm pretty sure he's a pretty sizable underdog here, but I don't think he can be written off. He is really coming into his own as a fighter. The last 3 guys he's beaten have all been very solid. And Henry Cejudo is like he's still coming along. You know, what do you think are Sergio's best opportunities to actually win this fight? Because it sounds like we're both feeling like he's probably going to lose.
Yeah, I think it's just stick and move. Punish Cejudo when he comes in. Keep your feet moving. Do not agree to engage him in the pocket or at close range. Like, as much as Sergio likes to exchange and likes to throw back, I think he's got to be real proactive in this fight and not let Cejudo have opportunities to throw back at him, because Cejudo will. And Cejudo's another guy who does a good job of following your counters back, because he's not the world's biggest guy for this division. He's 5'4", doesn't have particularly long arms, but what he is incredibly explosive.
Yeah.
So when you throw something at Cejudo, he will throw back at you, but it's rarely with his feet planted. He's going to move forward into you. And that plays off the threat of his takedowns too, because he can just as easily change levels, duck under, go for your hips, or he can duck under and try to grab a clinch on you. He's got all of these options available to him, and that helps make him a more dangerous counterpuncher. I think the physicality bit is going to be the real difference maker here for Cejudo. Like, he's going to get out techniqued if this turns into a boxing match. He's going to eat shots if and when he pressures. I think Cejudo is probably comfortable with that. But if he gets his hands on Sergio, that's all she wrote. Like, against bantamweights, Sergio was getting tossed around. Against big flyweights, Sergio is physically moved by these guys, and Cejudo is going to be the strongest, most technically sound wrestler that he's ever faced. So
yeah, and
I think that's going to be the difference.
Even with the striking, I mean, I agree. Like, if it's a boxing match in the sense that these guys are fencing at long range, that does not favor Cejudo. But I think he could do surprisingly well here just by coming forward and throwing heavy shots. Like, just don't fight the boxer. You know what I mean? That old axiom. Just make Sergio fight and use that to keep him guessing with your takedowns.
And if Cejudo can do anything, like, this has always been real striking to me, regardless of the questions about his work ethic and where his head's at. Cejudo is a born fighter, man.
Yeah.
Like, he is a scrappy, aggressive, mean motherfucker. And he wrestled like that too. You know, like, not all wrestlers kind of have that kind of grittiness and griminess and willingness to hurt the other guy built into him. Cejudo has always had that, you know? So I think that in particular against a more of a finesse-oriented guy like Pettis, as tough as he is going to be real tough. Like, I think Cejudo is going to make it grimy as hell. And that in that kind of fight, that's just going to be hard for Sergio to get his combinations off.
Yeah, but Cejudo can be hurt. Like, let's remember, like, it wasn't just the Demetrius Johnson fight. There was a fight of his, I think, in Legacy, maybe his fight with Elias Garcia, just before he came to the UFC, where he was on rubber legs at one point in that fight. And Sergio carries some power. So I think it will be an interesting fight. It'll be kind of a tale of two fights, where both guys trying to force their kind of action on the other. And I think that is typically what makes for a thrilling motherfucking contest. So I'm looking forward to all of UFC 211. And those three are obviously three of the biggest fights, particularly the title fights, but that flyweight main card opener should be a fantastic way to get into the main card action, especially because like Edgar Rodriguez and Maya Masvidal might be a little slower paced. They probably stand a better chance, and I think Cejudo Pettis is almost guaranteed to be action. You know what I mean? To be a serious... You know what I mean? What am I trying to say?
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
To be a barn burner, to be a slobber knocker, to be any of those other phrases that gets tossed around so much in the combat sports world. Brain shutting off there slightly at the end, but it's only because these fights are so good. Okay, it's not because I don't get enough sleep and and my world is crumbling around me. It's just because the fights are good. So don't worry about that other stuff. My girlfriend's not thinking about leaving me. Everything's fine. Let's go ahead and wrap it up. Before we do, though, I want to say we're going to have a bonus episode coming out this week as well. In addition to this, we did a bonus episode last week. Make sure to check that out if you haven't already, where we talked about the way that fight length plays a role in how fights play out. We basically made the case that MMA needs more 5-round fights, and that boxing could maybe use a few less 12-round fights, particularly if they're going to be the kind of 12-round fights like Canelo versus Chavez Jr., which was just a tedious domination and did not need to be 12 rounds. But this week, we're going to be talking about more of the fights from UFC 211, because this card is so stacked that we could not have a show without discussing the prelims, and every single one of the 5 main card fights was good enough that we had to dedicate a whole segment to them. So on the bonus episode this week, we're going to be talking about the featured prelim, Eddie Alvarez versus Dustin Poirier. We're going to talk about the featherweight fight before that, Chaz Skelly versus Jason Knight. Or what's Chaz Skelly's redneck nickname? Because he has embraced the Southern boy thing in this fight. But we already have for Jason Knight. He's either Redneck Diaz or Hick Diaz.
Yeah, I think Hick Diaz is the go-to for Jason Knight, which I love. Like, I fucking love Jason Knight, man.
He's awesome, man.
The undercard of this event is just awesome.
Yeah, it's insane. And then we got middleweight fight Krzysztof Jotko versus 2-weight World Series of Fighting champion Dave Branch, returning to the UFC after quite a long stay and a very successful venture away from the promotion. So all 3 of those are insanely good fights. This whole card is insanely good, and we are going to talk about those on this week's bonus episode. So if you are not already subscribed to Heavy Hands on Patreon, it's just $3 a month for 2 or more bonus episodes every single month. And and Phil McKenzie and I are going to be doing another bonus thing as well this week, if we have time for it, where we're going to talk about some more of the fights on this card, because really the whole thing is fucking awesome. So we're going to be doing a show that we'll probably post the first episode of it in the regular Heavy Hands RSS feed. Like, if you're subscribed to the show, you'll just get it through that. But after that first episode, it's going to be bonus. So we're trying to give you guys all kinds of reasons to subscribe to the show. We put out quality content, and it's just $3 a month. Like something about a cup of coffee, yada, yada. Do I need to sell you on $3 a month? If you like the show, you get at least 50% more of it every single month. What's not to like? Before we wrap up, Pat, your schedule this week looks like what?
Got a bunch of stuff coming out. I will have, hopefully, a pre-fight piece on Miocic-Dos Santos 2 up on the Washington Post. I don't know if my editor will email me back. And then hopefully I'll be doing event coverage for the Washington Post on Saturday night. I am definitely 100%, a pre-fight piece on Dos Santos Miocic 2 for Deadspin. Talking about kind of the meaning of that, where the UFC heavyweight division is, what this fight means, what we can expect from the matchup. And then I have a new Fall of Rome episode coming out, talking about the Kingdom of the Franks. And which is why we call France, France.
Francia.
What else am I doing this week? Yeah, that's about it. What are you doing, Connor?
By the way, people, we should emphasize before I say my shit. You're a dead boy now. You're at Deadspin. Now that you've left Bleacher Report, so you should plug that, man. Let people know where they can find your future MMA. Pieces.
Yeah. No, all of my MMA takes now, except when I do a big freelance thing, will be on Deadspin or the Washington Post. Like I'm not done writing about MMA. I'm just writing less. The podcasting is taking up so much more of my time now.
People think writing less is a bad thing, but what it means is you're writing things that you really care about.
Yeah, I got tired of writing event previews, and like think about weeks like last week where there literally wasn't shit going on in MMA. Mm-hmm. I still would have had to churn out 2 or 3 pieces on what was I going to write about? Like that grind got exhausting for me, and as I've had a lot of other stuff going on, it's nice to be able to write more about the things that I want to write about.
Yeah, so you guys will be getting not only the same quality of Patrick Wyman writing, but a better quality, because it'll be only things that Pat really cares about. That's a good thing.
Exactly.
That's a good thing for a writer and for an audience. As for me, I've got the full Sherdog preview of UFC 211. I've got a piece in the works right now that should come out midweek about Junior Dos Santos and his hard road back to the title. It's called Cultivating Cagecraft. And I'll probably be doing some kind of pre-UFC 211 video as well. So just keep your eyes peeled. I'm not quite sure what the subject of that is going to be, but it will be coming out on Bloody Elbow and on the MMANation.com YouTube channel. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. And that's about it for the show. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Check us out on Patreon if you haven't subscribed already. We're putting out lots of good stuff over there that I think you owe it to yourself to hear. And if you want to get a taste, we've got now, I think, 3 teasers up in the regular Heavy Hands feed. So just subscribe to the show. We're available on Stitcher, on iTunes, and the Google Play Store, or through your favorite RSS feed or podcast app. And you can check out those little teasers. We got like 2-minute teasers for all of our most recent bonus content that gives you an idea of what it sounds like. It's pretty much this, but, laid back, fun. Pat and I are both like audibly like drinking beer, you know what I mean? It's like hanging out with your buddies. It's great. So, that's not what it's like, but it is good. It's worth your time. So thank you guys for listening. Check us out on social media at Patrick_Wyman for Pat. I am at Boxing Bush. That's BUSCH. And I guess that's it. If you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been a too long episode of Heavy Hands. Whew. When did I become so bad at succinctly wrapping up the show?